The annual Chin family barbecue was my least favorite day of the year. At 32, I was the only unmarried woman in 3 generations and they never let me forget it. While my cousins showed off engagement rings and baby photos, I sat quietly checking emails and ignoring the pitying glances. My sister Emma was the golden child. Married at 24, 2 kids by 28, perfect suburban home. She worked part-time at a non-profit while I'd spent 5 years building what everyone called my computer hobby. Sophia, when are you giving me grandchildren? Mom asked loudly. Emma's blessed us with 2 beautiful babies and you're still playing with computers. Emma smirked from her lawn chair. Mom, Sophia's too busy coding to think about real life. She probably talks to her laptop more than humans. The family erupted in knowing laughter. What was that about coding? Aunt Linda called out. Emma stood up dramatically. She's been saying for years her little app will make her rich. Still waiting. She walked over, voice dropping to a theatrical whisper that reached every corner. Face it, sophomore. You're 32, single, living in that tiny apartment because you spent everything on a pipe dream. Time for a real job and a real man. The family murmured agreement. Grandma Chin nodded from her wheelchair. In my day, women knew priorities. Family first. For 5 years I'd endured this speech. They didn't understand my little app was actually a revolutionary AI cybersecurity platform with contracts spanning major banks, healthcare systems and government agencies. The NDAs were ironclad and honestly I'd grown tired of defending myself. She's hopeless, Emma continued. Still single and coding at 32. What kind of life is that? Look around, Sophia. Family, love, stability. Not some fantasy about becoming a tech billionaire. Dad turned from the grill. Emma's right. He's got life figured out. Children, husband, home. That's success. I pulled out my phone, pretending to check messages while reviewing final IPO documents my lawyers had sent that morning. Tomorrow would change everything. Put that phone away, Mom scolded. This is family time. Though since you don't have a family you wouldn't understand. Emma laughed. She probably has a dating app open, desperately swiping. More family laughter as my teenage cousin filmed for TikTok. Uncle Frank ambled over, beer in hand. What's the commotion? Trying to talk sense into Sophia, Emma explained. Help her understand this tech thing isn't going anywhere. Uncle Frank nodded. Tech bubble's gonna burst. Listen to your sister, Sophia. Emma's got the right idea. Stability, family values, a good man. I can take care of myself, I said quietly. Emma rolled her eyes. With what money? That up. Sophia, you're not Mark Zuckerberg. You're just a single woman who's been playing computer games instead of building a real life. Uncle Frank gestured emphatically. Women in tech isn't natural. Men understand technology. Women are nurturers. That's your strength, Sophia. The afternoon dragged with more lectures about my failures. Every conversation circled back to my lack of husband, childless state, unrealistic ambitions. Emma held court, accepting congratulations on her new pregnancy while casting pitying glances my way. As sunset approached, the family gathered around the patio TV. Uncle Frank claimed the remote, flipping channels when financial news appeared. Usually he'd skip it, but something caught his attention. The Nasdaq bell was ringing, massive numbers on the ticker. Holy cow, Uncle Frank muttered, turning up volume. Look at this IPO. Some tech company went public for $50 billion. Emma looked up. $50 billion? Impossible. Tech companies don't make real money. The reporter's voice filled the patio. In a stunning debut, CyberShield Technologies, founded by entrepreneur Sophia Chin, completed the largest tech IPO in 5 years. Trading opened at $200 per share, valuing the company at $50 billion and making Chin one of the youngest female billionaires in history. Complete silence. I could hear a neighbor's dog barking 3 houses away. My phone rang loud enough for everyone to hear. Caller ID, Goldman Sachs Investment Banking. Aren't you answering that? Emma asked, voice strangely small. I looked around at my family, all staring with expressions from shock to dawning horror. Uncle Frank's burger had fallen onto his shoes. I suppose I should, I said calmly, answering. Hello, this is Sophia Chin. The family watched in stunned silence as I discussed stock prices, market caps, and media requests. When I hung up, the silence stretched uncomfortably. That was Mom started then stopped. A joke, Emma said firmly. This has to be fake. Sophia, what did you do? Hire actors. There's no way you're worth 50 billion. I showed them news articles already appearing across every major financial website. Forbes, Wall Street Journal, TechCrunch, Bloomberg. $50 billion? Grandma whispered. More than some countries, Uncle Frank said, frantically Googling my name. Sophia, is this real? Several times over, actually, I confirmed. Emma scrolled through articles, face growing pale. This says you've been running this for 5 years. Pentagon contracts, major banks. Why didn't you tell us? When would I have? Between lectures about finding a husband, during speeches about wasting my life, while you explained I was playing games. Dad set down his spatula. If we'd known, you'd have treated me differently? That's exactly why I didn't tell you. Emma stared at her phone. It says you donated 20 million to cybersecurity education last year. 20 million. More than your entire family made this past decade combined, I said quietly. But please don't let that stop you from explaining what really matters. Mom launched into damage control. Sweetheart, we've always supported your dreams. We just wanted you to be practical. By calling my life's work a hobby? Telling everyone I was delusional. Emma walked over, expression mixing shame and desperation. I'm sorry. We didn't know. We were worried. No. You were embarrassed by me. You wanted me to fit your idea of what a woman should be. My phone rang again, my assistant about morning interviews. As I confirmed appearances on 3 networks and Fortune's cover shoot, I watched panic spread across my family's faces. We're family, Emma tried. Blood is thicker than water. Loving someone means supporting their dreams, not mocking them. It means celebrating successes, not tearing them down. I picked up my purse and headed for the gate. Enjoy your barbecue. Where are you going? Mom called. To my tiny downtown apartment, the 5,000 square foot penthouse I bought with money from my computer hobby. At the gate I turned back. Next time you lecture someone about what really matters, make sure you're not talking to someone more successful than everyone here combined. I left them standing in stunned silence, surrounded by the debris of their assumptions. As I drove away in my Tesla, another purchase they'd mocked as impractical, I felt lighter than I had in years. My phone buzzed constantly with congratulations from investors, board members, and industry leaders. The media requests were overwhelming. Bloomberg wanted an exclusive about my journey. TechCrunch was preparing a cover story. The White House had called about a technology advisory position. But the most satisfying notifications were the desperate texts from my family. Emma's messages grew increasingly frantic. Sophia, please call me back. I'm so sorry. We need to talk. Family is everything. Mom left tearful voicemails about misunderstandings and being so proud. Uncle Frank attempted to pitch me on a real estate investment opportunity within hours of the revelation. The next morning, I woke up in my penthouse to every major news outlet leading with CyberShield's IPO story. The headlines painted me as a visionary entrepreneur who had revolutionized cybersecurity while staying true to her values. Financial analysts were calling it the most successful tech debut in a decade. My assistant had scheduled back-to-back interviews. First was CNBC's morning show, where the anchor asked about my family's reaction to the news. They're still processing it, I said diplomatically. 4 years they saw my modest lifestyle and assumed failure. They didn't know about the separate accounts, the investments, or that my tiny apartment was actually a penthouse I owned outright. The anchor leaned forward. What would you say to other women whose families don't support their ambitions? That your worth isn't determined by other people's understanding of your value. Sometimes the people closest to you can't see your potential because they're too invested in keeping you small. That soundbite went viral within hours. The Forbes photographer arrived at my office that afternoon. As she set up lighting for the cover shoot, she mentioned my family had tried contacting the magazine for comment. What did they say? I asked, adjusting my blazer. Your sister wanted to talk about how proud the family has always been of your success. The photographer rolled her eyes. We declined the interview. During the shoot, my lawyer called with updates. 3 major networks wanted exclusive documentaries about my rise. Harvard Business School was offering a guest lecturing position. The Pentagon was fast-tracking security clearance for expanded government contracts. But the call that meant the most came from Dr. Sarah Martinez, a professor at MIT who specialized in encouraging women in STEM fields. Sophia, your story is exactly what young women need to hear. Would you consider speaking at our Women in Technology conference next month? Absolutely, I said without hesitation. What's the theme? Building the life you deserve regardless of who believes in you. Perfect. That evening I finally listened to my family's voicemails. 23 messages, each more desperate than the last. Emma's final message was particularly telling. Sophia, I know I messed up. We all did. But your family and family forgives. Think about what you could do for us now. The kids' college funds, mom and dad's retirement, my mortgage. You have so much and we have so little. Please call me back. I deleted the message without responding. The MIT conference was standing room only. Young women filled the auditorium, their faces bright with ambition and determination. I told them my story, the family barbecue, the dismissive comments, the moment everything changed. Your dreams don't need anyone else's approval, I concluded. Sometimes the people who should support you the most will be the ones trying hardest to hold you back. Build anyway. Succeed anyway. And when you do, remember that you owe nothing to people who never believed in you. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Afterward, a young computer science student approached me, tears in her eyes. My parents keep asking when I'm going to find a husband and quit this computer nonsense. Your story gives me hope. Keep coding, I told her. And remember, their lack of vision doesn't define your future. 6 months later, I established the Chin Foundation for Women in Technology with a $500 million endowment. The announcement made international headlines, and I used the platform to speak about believing in yourself when others don't. The foundation's first initiative was a scholarship program for women pursuing STEM degrees despite family opposition. Applications flooded in from daughters, sisters, and granddaughters whose families had dismissed their ambitions. My own family continued reaching out sporadically. Birthday cards arrived with carefully worded messages about family bonds. Emma sent photos of her children with notes about how they'd love to meet their successful aunt. Uncle Frank mailed investment proposals quarterly. I responded to none of them. At the foundation's launch gala, surrounded by brilliant women I'd chosen to invest in, a reporter asked about work-life balance and whether I regretted choosing career over family. I didn't choose career over family, I told her, looking out at the audience of scholarship recipients, mentors, and supporters. I chose to build the family I deserved instead of accepting the one that never deserved me. That quote became the foundation's unofficial motto. Sometimes the best response to people who diminish you is simply proving them spectacularly wrong, and then using your success to lift up others they would have dismissed too. As I watched young women networking and sharing their dreams at the gala, I realized something profound. I wasn't the spinster they'd mocked at that family barbecue. I was exactly who I was meant to be, successful, independent, and surrounded by people who celebrated my achievements instead of resenting them. The family who had called me a failure would spend the rest of their lives watching my success from the outside, wondering what might have been different if they'd chosen support over shame. But I would never wonder about that because I'd learned the most valuable lesson of all. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is the courage to walk away from people who refuse to see your worth. The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across our family's formal dining room as I pushed my untouched beef Wellington around my plate. Monthly family dinners were always tense, but tonight felt different. The air was thick with unspoken words, and my parents kept exchanging meaningful glances. Emma, my mother finally said, setting down her wine glass with deliberate precision, your father and I have been discussing your situation. I looked up, meeting her perfectly made-up face. At 28, I was the family disappointment, the only one of the 3 Anderson children who hadn't followed the prescribed path of law school and joining the family's prestigious law firm. My situation? I kept my voice neutral, though my heart started racing. My older sister Victoria smirked from across the table. At 32, she was already a junior partner at Anderson & Associates, following perfectly in our father's footsteps. Next to her, my younger brother Michael, 26, was quickly climbing the firm's ranks. Yes, Dad cleared his throat. Your persistent refusal to join the firm, this foolish startup venture of yours. It's gone on long enough. I gripped my fork tighter. My foolish venture was a tech company I'd built from scratch 3 years ago. developing AI-driven legal research software. I tried explaining to them how it could revolutionize legal research, but they dismissed it as a waste of time. We're cutting you off completely, Mom announced as if commenting on the weather. No more trust fund access, no more living in the family apartment, no more credit cards. It's time you grew up and accepted your responsibilities. The room fell silent. Victoria's smirk grew wider. Michael suddenly became very interested in his green beans. I haven't touched the trust fund in 2 years, I said quietly. Don't be ridiculous, Mom scoffed. How else could you be supporting yourself with this little computer project of yours? Before I could respond, Victoria chimed in. I heard your company's barely breaking even, Emma. Patricia from Morgan Stanley told me all about it. I had to bite back a laugh. Patricia from Morgan Stanley had no idea about my company's financials. We'd stayed private deliberately, flying under the radar while we perfected our technology. Actually, I started, but Dad cut me off. Enough excuses. You have 2 choices. Join the firm as a first-year associate or face being cut off completely. We've already had the trust fund papers drawn up. I'm not joining the firm, I said firmly. Then you leave us no choice, Mom sighed dramatically. We're doing this for your own good. You can't keep playing entrepreneur forever. Just then my phone rang. I usually silenced it during family dinners, one of Mom's strict rules, but tonight I'd left it on purposely. The caller ID showed my assistant's name. Excuse me, I said, standing up. I need to take this. Emma. Mom's voice rose sharply. We are having a family discussion. I answered anyway, putting it on speaker. Yes, Sophia? Ms. Anderson. My assistant's professional voice filled the dining room. I apologize for interrupting your dinner, but you asked to be notified immediately. Our stock just hit $90 million in the private trading round. Morgan Stanley is requesting an urgent meeting about taking us public. The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria's fork clattered against her plate. Michael choked on his wine. Mom's perfectly composed face froze in shock. Thank you, Sophia, I said calmly. Schedule the meeting for tomorrow morning. I hung up and looked around the table, taking in their stunned expressions. The chandelier light suddenly felt brighter, illuminating their confusion and disbelief. You were saying something about cutting me off? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Dad's face had turned an interesting shade of red. But how? I pulled out my chair and sat back down, finally taking a bite of my dinner. It's amazing what you can accomplish when you're not trying to live up to someone else's expectations. The Wellington was cold, but victory had never tasted sweeter. $90 million? Victoria whispered, her smirk completely gone. Actually, I corrected her, that's just the current stock price. The company's total valuation is significantly higher. Mom reached for her wine glass with a slightly trembling hand. But Patricia from Morgan Stanley said. Patricia from Morgan Stanley, I interrupted, doesn't know anything about my company because we've kept everything private. Until now. The family dinner that was supposed to put me in my place had turned into something entirely different. As I sat there watching my family's carefully constructed narrative about me crumble, I couldn't help but think about how we'd gotten here. They had never believed in me, never supported my vision. They dismissed my company as a hobby, my ambitions as a phase. Now, sitting at the same table where they'd lectured me countless times about responsibility and family legacy, I was about to show them exactly what their disappointing daughter had built. And this was just the beginning. The next morning, I walked into Morgan Stanley's Manhattan office wearing my favorite power suit. The contrast between last night's family dinner and today's meeting couldn't have been starker. Here I wasn't the disappointing daughter. I was the CEO of Legal Tech AI, the company that was revolutionizing the legal industry. Ms. Anderson, Patricia herself greeted me at the elevator, the same Patricia who'd apparently been spreading rumors about my company's failure. I had no idea you were the founder of Legal Tech. Why didn't you ever mention it at the club? I smiled politely. I prefer to let my work speak for itself. The conference room was packed with investment bankers and analysts, all eager to discuss taking Legal Tech public. As I sat at the head of the table, my phone buzzed with texts from my family. Mom, we need to talk about last night. Victoria, Dad's furious. Fix this. Michael, holy shit sis. Why didn't you tell us? I silenced my phone as the meeting began. My CFO David started presenting our financials, 3 years of steady growth, zero debt, and a client list that included 8 of the top 10 law firms in the country. Except Anderson and Associates, one analyst noted, looking up from his papers. Any particular reason your family's firm isn't using your software? The room went quiet. Everyone in Manhattan's legal circle knew the Andersons. Anderson and Associates prefers traditional methods, I said diplomatically. But we respect their choice to stay traditional. A few people smirked. Everyone knew what traditional meant: outdated, resistant to change, stuck in the past. After the meeting, Patricia cornered me by the elevators. Emma, your mother must be so proud. She never mentioned. Actually, I cut her off. My family just found out last night. But feel free to discuss it at your next tennis match with my mother. Back at my office, my assistant Sophia was managing the fallout from last night's revelation. Your father's called 6 times, she reported. Your sister's in the lobby demanding to see you, and your brother's been sending LinkedIn requests to everyone on our executive team. I took off my heels and settled behind my desk. Send Victoria up. Might as well face this now. Minutes later, my sister burst into my office, looking less polished than usual. What is wrong with you? She demanded. Do you have any idea what you've done? Built a successful company? Created revolutionary software? Made millions without riding Dad's coattails. Don't be cute, she snapped. Dad's reputation is at stake. How do you think it looks that his own daughter's legal tech company is being used by every major firm except ours? I leaned back in my chair. Probably the same way it looked when you all dismissed my little computer project for 3 years. We were trying to protect you. Victoria ran her hands through her perfectly styled hair. The legal world is all about tradition, connections. The legal world is changing, I interrupted. That's what none of you understand. While you're all clinging to leather-bound books and manual research, the rest of the industry is evolving. Dad wants you to sell, she blurted out. He's willing to forgive everything if you sell legal tech and come back to the firm. He'll even make you partner in 2 years. I laughed out loud. Partner? Victoria, I'm about to take my company public. I'll be worth more than Anderson and Associates by the end of this year. The color drained from her face. What? You heard me. And here's something else you should know: Townsend and Myers, your biggest competitor? They just signed a contract with us yesterday. Their research efficiency has already improved by 60%. Victoria sank into one of my office chairs. This will kill Dad. No, I said firmly. This will wake him up. The world is changing, Victoria. Dad can either adapt or watch his firm become obsolete. As Victoria left my office looking shaken, I turned to look out at the city skyline. The family dinner that was supposed to cut me off had instead revealed just how far I'd risen. But something told me this was just the beginning of the storm. My phone buzzed again, another text from Mom. We're having an emergency family meeting tonight. Your attendance is mandatory. I smiled, typing back, sorry, can't make it. Have a board meeting about our IPO. Feel free to read about it in tomorrow's Wall Street Journal. Then I turned back to my computer. I had an empire to run. The Wall Street Journal article dropped at 6 a.m. the next morning. Legal Tech AI. The billion-dollar startup revolutionizing legal research. How Emma Anderson built an empire while her family's law firm wasn't looking. I read it in my penthouse apartment. The one I'd bought myself, not the family property they'd threatened to take away. The article was comprehensive, detailing how I'd spotted a gap in the market that traditional firms like Anderson and Associates had ignored. My phone started ringing at 6:05 a.m. I let it go to voicemail, instead opening my laptop to read the flood of emails coming in. Law firms around the country were desperate to schedule demos, investors were clamoring for meetings, and tech blogs were already hailing legal tech as the future of legal research. Ms. Anderson, Sophia called through my private line. Your mother's in the lobby. She's refusing to leave without seeing you. I sighed. Send her up. Mom appeared at my door minutes later, looking uncharacteristically disheveled. Her eyes widened as she took in my apartment, the floor-to-ceiling windows, the modern art, the view of Central Park. You live here? She asked, her voice small. For the past year, I replied. Would you like some coffee? She nodded, sinking into my designer sofa. I poured her a cup from my expensive coffee machine, another luxury I'd bought with my own money. The article, she started then stopped. Your father, he's not well. Because his firm is now publicly known to be behind the times? I asked, sitting across from her. Because his daughter blindsided him, she snapped, then caught herself. Emma, why didn't you tell us? I tried, Mom. For 3 years I tried to tell you about what I was building. You and Dad were too busy pushing me to join the firm, too convinced I was wasting my time. But $1 billion, she whispered. The article says you're going to be one of the youngest female tech billionaires in the country. Funny how success changes people's perception of waste, isn't it? Just then my phone buzzed with a text from David. Townsend and Myers just announced they're moving all operations to legal tech systems. Stocks up another 30%. Mom's phone rang moments later. Probably Dad hearing the news that his biggest competitor was now using his daughter's software. He'll never forgive you, she said quietly. No, I corrected her. He'll never forgive himself. There's a difference. After Mom left, I headed to the office. The atmosphere was electric. News of the Wall Street Journal article had everyone buzzing. As I walked through the open workspace, my employees stood and started applauding. Speech, someone called out. I smiled, looking around at the faces of people who had believed in my vision when my own family hadn't. 3 years ago, I began, everyone said legal tech couldn't work. That law firms wouldn't change, that tradition was too strong. But we proved them wrong. And this is just the beginning. More applause. Then Sophia rushed over with an urgent message. Anderson and Associates was calling an emergency press conference. I watched it live from my office. Dad stood at the podium looking older than I'd ever seen him. Victoria and Michael flanked him, both trying to maintain their usual confident expressions. Anderson and Associates is proud to announce a complete digital transformation. Dad read stiffly. We will be partnering with leading legal tech companies to modernize our operations. I turned off the stream. They still didn't get it. There was only one leading legal tech company and I owned it.